Okay, on this video we will be covering 2.4, factoring and solving quadratic equations from your worksheet 2.4. I really want to focus on factoring. I have a student that stopped by and asked me, Ms. Myers, can you please create a video on factoring so we can really be good at the factoring skills. You have to be good at factoring before you can solve the quadratic equation, okay? Alright, so let's do a few problems here on your worksheet. I selected a few problems. I selected problem number 8, problem number 9, 10, and 15. So let's do those problems. I want to do here on a separate piece of paper. So I'm going to write problem number 8 first, okay? So number 8 says 3x squared plus 4x plus 1. Okay, so I want to do the guess and I'm going to do the x factor method first, and then I will do the guess and check method. I want to do both side by side so you can see how it works, and you choose which method you like best. Okay, some students like the guess and check, some students like the factoring, the x factor. The x factor tells me I always grab the first leading coefficient, multiply by the constant in the back. So I use the x factor, that's why it's called the x factor. So 3 times 1 is 3. So two numbers that multiply, that gives me a 3, but when it adds up to the middle term, which is a 4. Okay? So it's multiplication going up and addition coming down. So two numbers that multiply, that gives me a 3, I think of 1 times 3. But to add, it does add up to a 4. So these two over here are my factors. But the problem with the x factor is that there's a lot of steps. Step number 1, this is my first step right here, is to find the factors. Once you find the factors, you must rewrite the equation. So you always rewrite the first term, 3x squared. You always rewrite the last term. The middle term is the combination of these factors right here that we found it. So I need to rewrite 4x as a 3x plus an x. Okay, there's my 3x plus the 1x, and that still equals a 4x. So I have a positive 3x plus an x, and then I have to repeat my last term. So you have to repeat the first term and the last term, and the middle term you rewrite it here from those factors. That's why this 2 factors has to add up to the middle term, so we can rewrite it. And that's the reason why it has to add up to the middle term. Now, the second step is to group them, group by 2's. Okay, the first 2's and the last 2's. So I grab the first 2 terms and the last 2 terms, and then we start factoring out greatest common factors. So the greatest common factor between these 2 terms is a 3x. So I'm going to divide both of those terms by 3x. 3x squared divided by 3x gives me an x left over, okay? And a positive 3x divided by 3x, that's a 1, okay? So imagine that I am dividing by a 3x here and divided by a 3x here. That's exactly what I'm doing. So the 3x is my GCF, and I get an x plus 1. Now, it looks like x, a positive x and a positive 1 has nothing in common, but we still can divide both of them by a positive 1, a positive 1. If they have nothing in common, one thing for sure they have in common is that they can both be divisible by a positive 1. So there we go, positive 1. And when I divide a positive x plus 1 divided by a positive 1, we still get a positive x plus 1. Then my third step is to factor again. You factor the greatest common factor between these 2 terms again. This first 2 and this last 2 has something common. Is this factors right here, x plus 1. So when I remove this x plus 1, when I factor out the x plus 1, the leftover is my 3x plus 1. Okay? So, and there is the answer for this factoring. So notice the steps that I used. X factor has a lot of steps. First, find the factors and rewrite them. You probably wonder, why did she put the 3x first? Because I wanted the 3x to be partnered with the 3x squared. And then I put the x here in the back. Okay, I look at the numbers and I try to partner up which ones go better. Okay, now take a look versus the guess and check method. Okay, I want you to see this is the x factor. Look what we would have done if it was the guess and check method. I'm going to use exactly the same problem, 3x squared plus 4x plus 1. In the guess and check method, it literally only has 2 steps instead of 1, 2, 3. You know, there's like several steps here, most likely to make a mistake. In the guess and check, you literally only have to worry about what are the 2 factors that multiplied and gives me 3x squared. It has to be a lower power than x squared, so it is 3x times x. So it has to be a lower power than x squared. Okay. Then what are the 2 numbers that multiply that gives me 1? What are the factors of 1? That it has to be 1 times 1. Okay, now I'm ready. First, we found the factors. Okay, first I found the factors. Now I'm going to start guessing. Okay, now I just guess. The first item, the first term, always take priority inside of the parentheses. So 3x goes here and x goes here. They take priority. Now this ones, I only have 1 times 1. They go in the second spot. Okay, plus 1 here, plus a 1 here. Now it's time for me to check to see if I set my problem correctly. How do we check? You multiply the inner terms and the outer terms. Together, those 2 terms has to add up to the middle term for x. It always has to add up to the middle term. Just like in the x factor has to add up to the middle term. Positive 1 times x is x, and 3x times 1 is 3x. When I add these 2 terms together, an addition, it thus becomes 4x. So there we go. We got our factors. 3x plus 1 is x plus 1. Exactly the same thing we got it from here, but we had to work a lot harder to get the right answer. Okay? And that's problem number 8. So the factors of 3x squared plus 4x plus 1 is 3x plus 1 times x plus 1. Those are the factors. If I was to FOIL this together, okay, multiply all the terms together, I would end up getting my original problem. So that is how you do your guess and check versus x factor. Let me do one more. Let me do number 9 in both ways so you can see which way you like better. And then once you choose one, stick to it. Okay? Let's do problem number 9. Number 9 says 4x squared plus 13x plus 3 versus, we're going to do guess and check in just a minute. Okay? Let's do the x factor first. Here's the x factor. The first number, the leading coefficient times the constant, that's 12. 2 numbers that multiply, that gives me 12, but it has to add up to 13. So I think, well, 1 times 12, okay? Positive 1 times positive 12 gives me 12, but it adds up to positive 13. I have to rewrite the first term for x squared, and I'll also have to rewrite the last term, plus a 3. In between are the factors I found it. I want to put the 12 first because the 12 goes well with the 4. So I'm going to write plus 12x plus the 1x. Together, these 2 terms, 12x plus 4x, is still equals the 13x. Okay? If you chose to put the x first and the 12x in the back, you would still get the same answer. It doesn't matter. Okay, now the second step is to group them by 2's until we finish pulling out all the common factors. So they both have a 4 that I can divide by, and they both can be divisible by x. So 4x is the common factor for these 2 terms. Okay, so when I divide this by 4x, we get an x left. When I divide 12x by 4x, we get a positive 3. Okay, now x plus 3 has really nothing in common. They can both be divisible by a 1. So x plus x divided by 1 is an x. A positive 3 divided by 1 is a positive 3. So you're almost done. I know I did it correctly because my x plus 3 show up twice, and that's the common factor between these two terms. If you group this first term and this last term, they both have a x plus 3 in common. So we take the x plus 3 out, and the leftover is 4x plus 1. There we go. Those are our answers. Those are our factors. I don't know about you, but let's see what you think about guess and check. At least give it a try until you make up your mind. Guess and check for 4x squared plus 13x plus 3. Let's forget about the answer we see on this side. Don't look at it. Let's just focus here. Okay, two numbers, two factors that multiply gives me 4x squared, 4x times x. They're going to take priority. Over here, we have 1 times 3. There's no other option. Those are the two factors that multiply that gives us 3. Okay. Now, the first term, always take priority for x times x. Okay. If you want to put x here and 4x here, sure. But they take the first spot on the parentheses. Now, in here, I can either put a 3 here and a 1 here, or vice versa. Whatever I put in there, I'm going to check. I'm going to guess first where the 1 and the 3 goes, and then I'm going to check. Once I finish multiplying, their addition should end up with a 13x. Okay, the middle term always has to add up to the middle term. So how about I put a 3 in here and a 1 in the back? I'm going to just guess that it goes there. Now I'm ready to check. 3 times x is 3x. 4x times 1 is 4x. And when I add 3x plus 4x, gives me 7x. So that is not the correct setup. So that is not correct. I'm going to switch it. I'm going to put the 1 in here, and I'm going to put the positive 3 in the back. Positive 1 in here, positive 3 in the back. Now let's check. 1 times x is just an x. And 4x times 3, that is 12x. All right. And an x plus a 12x is 13x. I got it right. I just had to switch their position, and that's the answer that matched exactly with what we did before in the x factor. Okay, so I personally love this method because there's less steps to make a mistake, and I'm always checking, and I won't stop until I check it and it's correct, so I know it's the correct answer. Okay, so let's do one more. That was number 9. Let's just do one more to make sure we have made a decision which system or procedure we're going to use, okay? Which method we're going to use. Number 10. Number 10 says 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. We're going to do both ways. We want to please everybody, so let's do it. All right, so x factor. 2 times 5. 2 times 5, 10. But it must add up to 7. So 2 times 5. 2 times 5 multiplies to a 10, but adds up to a 7. We must rewrite the first term, 2x squared. We must rewrite the last term, positive 5. Oh, I need lines. So the middle term is going to be a combination of these two factors. I really don't want to put the 5 with the 2. I'm going to put the 2 in the front. So 2x, and I'm going to put the 5 with the 5. Plus 5x. Oh my gosh, this looks so ugly, so hideous. Let me rewrite it. 2x squared plus 2x plus 5x plus 5. There we go. So sorry. So we rewrote the last term, we rewrote the first term, and the middle is a combination of our factors. And they do add up to a 7x. I see that. Okay, 2x plus 5x equals 7x. Okay. Now we regroup them and regroup them. Between these two, in common is the 2x. When I divide this by a 2x, we get an x left. And when I divide this by a 2x, we get a positive 1. They both have a 5 that I can divide by, a positive 5, as a matter of fact. Positive 5. When I divide that 5x by a 5, we get an x. When I divide a 5 by a 5, we get a 1. Look at that. We know we're doing it right because they both appear here. Now I'm going to extract it out the common between the first set of values and the second set of values. They both have the x plus 1 in common. And once I extract that, I'll have the 2x left over and the positive 5 left over. And there is my factors. Lots of steps, but it's nice and clean. It's every single time the same thing, the same thing. As long as you start it right, the rest is just factoring until you get this there's nothing to factor out. Let's just do one more time the guess and check on this number, on this expression. 2x squared plus 7x plus 5. Okay, first let's find the factors. This is easy. This is 2x times x. Here is even easier because 5 is a prime number just like 3 and is only 1 times 5. We just have to now guess the order that they're going to go. Okay, the first 2 takes priority. I am going to put a 2x here and an x here. Alright, so I'm either going to put a 1 in here or I'll put a 5 in here or vice versa. Somehow these two values when multiplied needs to add up to 7x. If I put a 5 in here, it's going to be 5 times 2 is going to be 10. So we got to do a little bit of pre-mental math work. Okay, if I put a 5 in here, it's going to give me a 10. That's not going to look good. I'm going to put a 5 in here, a positive 5 in here, and a positive 1 in here. It's kind of like a good thinking, guessing type of setup. Okay, so I guess that that's where it's going to go. Now let me check. 5 times x is 5x. 2x times 1 is 2x. When you add these two terms, chick-a-boom, you got your 7x. So the answer is 2x plus 5 and the quantity of x plus 1, just like what we got back here. Okay? So pick one. Don't bounce them back between two types of methods. Pick one, stick to it, and just make the best out of it. Practice, practice, practice. Okay? So that is your factoring skills. Now, to solve it, you did all the hard work to actually get to finding the factors. Once you finish grabbing this, finding the factors, now you just need to solve it. Okay, so let's go ahead and solve it. I found the factors of 2x plus 5 and x plus 1. To solve it, I set it equal to 0. Okay, that's the easiest part. You set it equal to 0. You set each of the terms, each of the factors, equal to 0. 2x plus 5 equals 0, and x plus 1 equals 0. That is the easiest part. The harder part is finding the factors. Now you grab each factor and you set it equal to 0, and then you solve for x. Subtract 5 from both sides. I will have 2x equals negative 5, and then divide it by 2, and we get x equals negative 5 over 2. There we go. And here we just need to subtract 1 from both sides, and we get x equals negative 1. There we go. Okay? So factoring was the hard work, but once you get the factors, you set each of them equal to 0, and you solve it for x. Okay? All right. Let's just do one more, and that will conclude. I'm trying to stay with less than 25 minutes here. Let me just do one more from beginning to end. And I'm going to do number 15. So number 15 is 3x squared minus 8x plus a 4. And this one, I'm only going to do the guess and check method. Okay? So try it. The two values that multiply, that gives you 3x squared, is 3x times x. The two values that multiply, that gives you 4. I know you're thinking 2 times 2, but there is also 1 times 4, and then 2 times 2. Now I have two options, not just one option. But also, it has to add up to a negative 8x. So I'm also thinking that negative 2 times negative 2 gives me a 4, and negative 1 times a negative 4 also multiplies and gives me a 4. The reason I'm tackling these negatives in here is because my middle term is negative, and I need to add up to the negative term. So you have to use that knowledge of the middle term. The middle term guides your thoughts here, okay? You're guessing. So now I'm ready to guess. I'm going to put the priority ones here, 3x times x, right here. So I'm not sure if I'll use what numbers I'm going to put it here, but somehow when I multiply these two values and these two values, has to add up to negative 8x. Okay, has to add up to the middle term. So I start thinking, if I put a 2 here and a 2 here, let's just play with it before we even write it. If I put a negative 2 in here, I will get a negative 6. And if I put a negative 2 in here, I get a negative 2. So I'm going to pick this one because I did a little bit of a mental math and I already got some sort of a good direction here. So if I put a negative 2 here and a negative 2 here, negative 2x times an x is negative 2x, and positive 3x times a negative 2 is negative 6x. When I add these two terms, it does give me negative 8x. So there you go. The reason why I use negatives is because the middle term is negative. And I played around with my mind here with the negative 2's, and it already worked. So my answer for the factors is 3x minus 2 and x minus 2. That's the answer. Now for me to solve it, I'll set it equal to 0. I will also set each of the factors equal to 0. This is one factor, this is another factor. 3x minus 2 equals 0, and x minus 2 equals 0. Okay? I'm going to solve each of them separately for x. Add a 2 to both sides. We get 3x equals 2. And then divided by 3, we got that x equals 2 over 3, and that's one of the answers. And here, you add a 2 to both sides, and you get x equals positive 2. We're done. Okay? So I used the guess and check method, and you could have used the x factor. Doesn't matter. Okay? So good luck on this, guys. Let me know if you have any questions.